Thank you, Tim. That was a, a really immersive experience. I was almost forgot about the time. This is the part of the meeting where we introduce each other because we want interaction. You know, we want people to know each other. You know, find potential advisors, partners. You know, somebody mentors, or even probably a future co-founder. So we'll start from here, and it's going to be very quick. It's going to be tell us who you are and what you're doing. Great. Thank you very much. I mean, this has been wonderful. Number one, I love the startups. Very interesting stuff. I see. Well, anyway, let me introduce myself. My name is Uli Chettipally. I'm an emergency physician by training. Been with Kaiser for a long time. And also a research scientist there. Designed some neat systems there for clinical decision support. And then once I got out of Kaiser last year, I founded this company, Innovator MD. One of the things that I see is that physicians are way behind on innovation. Not because they're not interested, not because they don't know, but they're so inundated with work, and there are no opportunities for them to actually come and learn about it. So that's why we founded Innovator MD. And the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, I run the San Francisco Bay Area chapter. I've been doing that for about 6 years now. So we meet once a month, 10 months a year or so. And the other 2 months are parties, so you should come. If you're not a member of SOAP, it's a good idea to. It's a $89 membership, soapnet.org, and then you get free tickets to these events. I'm also with San Mateo County Medical Association, and thank you, Keith. Keith has been a great supporter of SOAP and of our meetings. This whole space, this beautiful location, wonderful food, and the great support from his staff. Otherwise, it's impossible to do these things. So thank you, Keith. I really appreciate it. I want to give him a hand of applause. Because he sees the value in this for physicians, and that's important. And that's what I was going to talk about it. And that was my last job at Kaiser Permanente. I was the chief technology officer of a research group which consisted of 14 physician scientists, staff of 5 people. We ran the group for about 10 years when I left. And we published about 100 papers, so it was a great group. We had designed systems for the Northern California region, 21 hospitals, where we have our systems monitoring about 1 million patients a year coming through the emergency departments and enrolling them in clinical studies and stuff. So, all great stuff. But what I enjoyed at Kaiser was something amazing that you don't see. You don't have that kind of opportunities outside in other systems, so kudos to Kaiser. How many of you are Kaiser members here? Oh my God, only 2.
You're making way too much money, man. They're a nonprofit organization, but they tripled their revenue this last year.
You know why?
Why?
Because they have 50% less strokes compared to other plans. 50% less.
They should be giving some of that money back to the people paying for their insurance.
Right? 30% less heart attacks. 30%. So if you're not a member, think about it. I'm not selling Kaiser, but you should think about.
You have brokerage on the side, huh?
You should. I want to see you healthy. You should work for Kaiser. Yes, it's a great benefit program. So it is a value-based system. So value-based, as most of you know, is that you make money when the patient is healthy. Simple. A fee-for-service system is where you make money when patient is sick because you can do stuff to the patient, right? Here you lose money when the patient gets sick or gets stroke or things like that. But anyway,
so many complaints about the lack of workflow optimization. But Kaiser was one of the first ones that actually implemented Epic. What have they done to improve that information system that would, make the system more efficient?
A lot of training, a lot of coaching, hand-holding, customization, a lot of customization.
That you can't use across the entire system? You have to reinvent the wheel every time you do Epic
A region,
Oh, my God.
yeah. And the system that,
The business model.
Every different from each hospital.
It is different, and they have a macro program that goes on top of Epic, and then facilitates a little bit further.
and the part of the system that I built for the Crest network was also that, which is a program that sits on top of Epic, pulls data from Epic and analyzes it and gives decision support. So yeah, you can do a lot of stuff. Anyway, so the reason why I wanted to speak today was the guy who was supposed to speak said he can't come in. So I thought this is a great opportunity for me to talk about things, and so this is going to be a very informal talk. Most of you have heard my talks before, so there's not much stuff there that I haven't shared. But one of the big things I want to share is that how can we get physicians more involved in innovation? And that's what, that's my main purpose for running these programs and running the conference, and also, being engaged with each other. I have a great job. I do consulting. So that part is taken care of. I'm able to pay the bills, so that's good. But how can we help each other? How can we make the community better and more engaged with the innovation community? So that's the main thing I wanted to talk about today. So most people don't know the big picture in healthcare. And that's one of the problems for innovators. Even physicians, a lot of physicians I talk with, they don't know what's happening in the big picture. And because that drives a lot of the work that they do, the things that come down the pike, the things that they're forced to do, even though they don't like it, and which causes problems, okay? So let's check off a few things that are happening. So typically physicians feel like this, and they are trying to change the healthcare system, they're trying to change their company, they're trying to figure out what to do. It's a huge dragon, and it drains a lot of energy out of physicians. The big picture is the clinical part that we do is a very tiny part of the whole system, right? If you think that, oh, it is taking care of patients, making people feel better, that's true. And if you look at the money that is spent, typically the physicians, the amount of, if you look at the big pie and the amount physicians take home, it's probably 10% and maybe another 10% for the services to support the physicians. So 80% of it is money that goes outside of the system. And so there's a lot of economic systems that are built that are not necessarily useful for physicians, that are not necessarily physicians friendly. And the regulatory climate, the legal climate, we just, Keith talked about MICRA. That's a huge issue. If you're talking about suddenly your insurance rates, your malpractice insurance rates going up by, 3 times, 4 times, even higher, 10 times. Yeah, in the states where this law is not there, they're losing physicians left and right, and the cost of care goes up because of the insurance rate.
More specific as to where it is now, because when I was in practice, California, like for OBGYN, was like $40,000 a year, but in New York it was like $200,000 a year. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. That's how still it is. It is good that the law is still there, but there's a lot of threat from the lawyers groups. And so all these pressures will not help physicians do their job, which is the clinical work, right? They are trying to save lives, they're trying to make people better, but all these pressures that pile up on them is making it harder. And so, well, who will save the physicians? Nobody's going to come and rescue the physicians. People think that, oh, they make a lot of money. Oh, they don't, they don't use technology. They don't, they don't like innovation. They don't want to do anything new. Don't touch me. That's the attitude that people feel about physicians. And so nobody else is coming to rescue physicians. The only way to rescue is to rescue ourselves. How do we make that change happen? And that's where innovation comes in. And that's why we, as physicians, have to be the clinical leaders in innovation. So the big problems, number one, the population is getting older. And as the population gets older, the cost of care goes up. Simple, right? More strokes, more heart attacks, more cancers, people dying left and right. Compared to other countries, and that red box is how much the healthcare costs. Of course, the big blue line is the total economy of US, right? That's the total GDP. And that red box is as big as the economy of Germany. So that's a huge problem. Cost of care, cost of, price index keeps going up, the purple line. Everything else stayed stable. The food, clothing, some of the things actually have gone down. The performance versus spending, that US is the highest spending nation on healthcare, and performance is not that great when we compare with other developed nations. There's a lot of new research coming out, but it's not helping directly the patient care. The research is not coming down into the patient, into the clinics. There are hassles with reimbursement. There are hassles with regulations. The medical legal we just talked about. Those are all the things that are draining for physicians. And so there is 51% burnout. Half of the physicians say that they're burnt out, which means that we are at the risk of losing these physicians to ill health or early retirements or just getting out. The technology has been doing great. There's a lot of data available, as you've seen. Excellent work with using data and the technology. Hardware speeds, algorithms are getting better. And why should physicians be why should there be physician innovation? Now, if you think about the science part of it, the clinical science, they're probably the most qualified, right? Somebody might come up with some operation or some technique or some, the other day I was looking at a study that was looking at spinal surgery. Oh, we found 50% of the patient got better after the surgery. Well, what happened to the other 50%? Right, those are the kinds of ridiculous things that are passed on to physicians because nobody on the physician side is looking at it and say, hey, this doesn't work. Now, technically they are the most influential, but not necessarily politically nor business-wise, money-wise, they're not influential. So how do you become more influential? And then when things come down, eventually they have to implement it. They are in the front, they're the front of the healthcare system. And so they're affected the most. They're obviously the patients. But, these are some of the reasons why physicians need to be, engaged. The technology is great. You get all these amazing technologies that you have seen today. The business is great because, obviously they're raising millions and billions and, you've seen those big exits. That's great. But the physician is lying down there and looking at all these things and watching. So it's like this mobile that is going around, and the technologists think it's great, the business people think it's great, the administrator think it's great. But when the physician looks at it, this is what they see. Not very pretty, right? And so that's another reason why physicians need to be in the forefront. They need to be there when the technology is being designed. So I appreciate a lot of these companies that I see, they have employed clinicians, chief science officer, chief medical officers. That's amazing, because then you get it right the first time. I typically look at technologies as, 3 use rules, whether it's usable. A physician can tell you in 5 minutes whether it's going to be used or not. Will it be used? Will you use it in your clinic? And somebody did a good survey of saying that, yeah, 90% would use it. That's a great thing. And is it really useful? How does it match up to the clinical science, right? These questions, they need to be asked very early in the process, and hopefully with a physician. I'll give you a quick example about Apple Watch, because everybody knows about it, and it's a great tool. It's an amazing piece of technology if you look at it, right? It can do an ECG on your wrist, and that is some power-packed piece of equipment. But here are the challenges. If you show it to a physician, he will say, oh, what's the benefit? Well, the U.S. Preventative Task Force said that you don't need to do an EKG as a screening test. So you never have to do an EKG on a patient who's asymptomatic. It's totally useless. Well, that's a big challenge. Challenge number 2, not everybody with atrial fibrillation needs treatment, right? So if everybody comes back with atrial fibrillation, do you treat them? No. How long does it have to be in atrial fibrillation before you start to treat? I'm sure some of our cardiologists, are there cardiologists here? I guess today is all OBGYN. How long should it be? Is it 1 second, 10 seconds, 1 minute, 1 day? So what about all the other risk factors that go into older patients, high blood pressure, obesity? These are all risk factors for AFib. Are you treating all these conditions, or are you just treating the AFib? And what's the business model? Is it going to be used in value-based care or fee-for-service? So those are some of the questions that we need to ask, right? And who are the people who can ask those questions? Only physicians. Only physicians can tell that what is the exact question you're trying to answer. I know, computers and technology, they can give us great answers. But I want us physicians to learn how to ask those questions. And also, kind of be the sounding board, be the advisor, be the mentor. And, in the process, you will learn too, right? When you're mentoring a company, when you're advising a company, you also learn. So whenever people introduce new technology, obviously it has to be scientifically sound, and physicians have to approve it, because if they're going to use it, they better approve it. It better decrease the time and effort for the physician. If it's going to add more work, no way it's going to be implemented. Are the incentives aligned? Is it fee-for-service, value-based care, and are the incentives aligned? If you do it, will it benefit the physician? And does it benefit the patient? Does it expedite care, or would it delay the care? That example of getting the cancer cells and the report within 1 week is an amazing example, right? That expedites patient care. That means that always think about these things, especially the quadruple aim. Benefit for the patient, benefit for the physician, the cost and the quality. I'll skip this slide, but what it shows is that each of these 4 blue circles, the academics, the associations, the EHRs, and providers, they all have different incentives, and very few people have the patient outcomes in mind. So always focus on patient outcomes. You will never go wrong. It may be slow for adoption, but eventually you will win. Okay, that's my book, and that's the conference we did in January, and we had a great turnout. Be prepared for the next conference. It's going to be again in January, first week, 8th through 10th, I think, the dates in San Francisco. So I would love you to have come and participate. We had like 50 plus speakers, physician innovators from all over the world, and it's an amazing event for 2 days. This time it's going to be probably 3 or 3.5 days. So I would welcome you to engage with our community. Come to these meetings. These are easy, and Keith provides great food. We rotate these meetings around the Bay Area, so sometimes it may be easier. But learn. We are in the best place on earth. I tell people that there's no other place like the Bay Area. We have the biggest biotech hub. We have the biggest IT hub, and we right here we have gaming hub. So that's where our Torque 3 comes in. You have all these gaming companies around this building, PlayStation and all. So this is the best place, if you're an innovator, and it's a great place to learn and enjoy your practice. Thank you.